Welcome to a very special DLLS Stars podcast on this Tuesday evening. If you are watching it as we broadcast first or after the fact, this is the DLLS Ranks Week. What if? Top 10 moments of what if for the Dallas Stars, or at least the first top 10. I'm sure there'll be other suggestions later, and maybe they'll ask us to do another one of these next year. But right now, alongside Sean Shapiro and Craig Ludwig. And if you look closely, you might be able to see a Petri dish. That would be Sam Nestler. Unfortunately, Sam is still sick, but we're hoping he'll be back on Wednesday. I'm Owen Newkirk, and of course, our producer, not our producer, is Elijah Smith. All right, guys, this is an interesting exercise. It's very hypothetical, and I want to, off the top, before we get into our first one, since Sean, one quick thing, we leaned heavily into not doing too much fan fiction in games. Now, some of the DLS hosts went with what happened if this play didn't happen. What if this guy caught this ball or dropped this one or hit this home run? And we thought for the most part that we were going to do it a different way than that, because that's then just writing basically fan fiction of outcomes of games.
Yeah. And that's, and honestly, I don't know. Are we allowed to say are we allowed to reference the final order for voting right now on this show for what came in with other things? Am I allowed to say that on this show live, or? I
mean, you can say what you want. Remember that the other shows may not have been recorded yet. So,
and that's fine. I think other shows, since they made a large part of the voting panel, highly disrespected. We other shows went lowbrow. They went more childish in how they ranked things. They went easy.
Yes. Our show is known for our highbrow nature, right?
Yes. We are the only show that I believe actually went through and made lists on, there's actual human decisions that were made and not a ball bouncing one way or the other or something like that. And I think
not
we are
judge the other shows, but we're judging.
I'm definitely judging the other shows. I think that I think there was I think there's definitely way more that could have been done from the other shows. When I see plays about, hey, what if a guy caught this ball or that ball? Every single night, 50 other things could happen on a play. So then we could do 50 what ifs from game one of every season too. So let's be. I'm going highbrow on this, and I'm judging others.
Sean is turning his nose up at the other shows. Are you at all interested in these hypotheticals as we start to play a little imagination?
Not at all. I'm thinking to myself, what if Owen would have been getting ready to start at 11, and what if Sean wouldn't have been late? We'd be done in like 27 minutes right now. But
fair enough. All right. Let's get it started now, because that's sort of what we're doing.
This is like that stuff that they do, and they go back and they redo the drafts, right?
Yes.
Oh my God. I hate
this is
that.
apparently. Oh yeah, you hate that, but this is better. So
I don't like this. Let's be clear on something.
We're doing this reluctantly.
We're doing these podcasts 5 days a week in July. That's what this is, and there's absolutely nothing going on.
I'm so glad Let's mention the draft, because speaking of which, our first what if happens to be about the draft. What if the Stars had drafted the other Lundqvist in 2000? And of course, they had drafted Joel Lundqvist, who played for Dallas, but we're talking about his brother Henrik in 2000, who was drafted in the 7th round.
Yeah.
What would have happened if Dallas had drafted Henrik Lundqvist? Sean?
And I think for the quick backstory for people, because I'm just going to use this to explain what happened on things and just use this as storytelling moment, and we'll just go it that way. So in the 2000 NHL draft, both Joel and Henrik Lundqvist are at the draft. Joel goes in the 3rd round, 68th overall to Dallas. Henrik Lundqvist later got drafted the 7th round, because I want to be right here, 205th overall, 7th round, obviously to the New York Rangers. Near the end of the 6th round, somebody from the Stars contacted Henrik Henrik and his agent that, hey, we're going to draft you in the 7th round so we can get both brothers. That was the plan. And when the Stars went and made that pick, so Henrik Lundqvist is watching I'm going to make sure I get the exact names on everything here. So when the Stars have the Stars had one more pick in the 6th round. It was midway through the 6th round, and Lundqvist's camp gets told, hey, we're going to draft, Dallas is going to draft you so you can go to the same team as your brother. That was the plan that had been relayed to the players. So we get to round 6, it's pick 192, and and Henrik Lundqvist is watching the draft. He's like, oh, Dallas is going to draft me. And so from the table goes, and so it goes from the table, the Dallas Stars with the pick 192, take Ladislav Víček from Kladno.
Who?
Exactly. Vladislav Víček from Kladno, and obviously Joel ended up having a little cup of coffee, nice career with the Stars, had a much better career in the SHL afterwards, but Henrik Lundqvist was heavily convinced he was going to become a Dallas Star. Obviously, no one knew what Henrik Lundqvist could become, and then in the 7th round, 27 picks later, the Rangers took him at 205, and it's and Hockey Hall of Famer, everything like that, and it's kind of one of those, like, I hate, as I said, Luds, I hate redrafts, I hate all of this, but this is just the fascinating spot of, because if you redrafted this draft, right, Henrik Lundqvist goes 3 or 4, right, and it's like, if there's no, but it's the question becomes, and I'll throw this to Luds because Luds understands how player development isn't always, it's not always going to be the same in every organization, right? So would there even have been a chance for a goalie drafted in 2000 to ever become the next guy? Because you had Marty was there. You had some other, at Martin, there's a string of younger goalies that were eventually shuffled out because of Marty. Like, so I go back to that, where not necessarily would Henrik Lundqvist have been a Hockey Hall of Famer if drafted by the Stars, but would he have even had a chance to be the guy in Dallas? Because no one would have known that, because Marty was basically blocking the door for guys to ever take that number 1 spot.
Well, the first thing I think of is if he did get an opportunity to play, whether it was a year or 2 later, maybe Marty Turco doesn't end up having the kind of numbers that he did, right? Yeah. And then I started thinking, well, if Hank was there, maybe 2, 3, 4 years after that, Brendan Morrow may have won a Stanley Cup.
Maybe. Yeah.
That's kind of the way I looked at it. Now that's kind of sounds like it's a slight to Marty, but I mean, Marty played pretty damn well. Right. Yes. And so there were other factors there. I had to go. Who was the general manager then? Was it Gainey?
That was one of Bob's last couple drafts. Yes, Bob was still there. So, and now, like, this is one of those, like, funny, like, redraft things. If anyone sitting at anywhere on those draft tables knew Henrik Lundqvist was going to be Henrik Lundqvist, he's not going 205 to the Rangers, right? Like, that's the whole other.
So here's my question then: Why was he so late, or why is he ranked so late? Was he just didn't have the numbers?
He was unknown really at that point, right? I mean, he was a guy. Wasn't he a roller hockey goalie at one point, Sean?
And he was in that spot where a lot of junior hockey goalies he had decent numbers, I think, in the Swedish junior league.
He was playing for Västra Frölunda juniors.
Yeah, but he was also 6'1", and he wasn't like, it's the whole. We hadn't gotten fully into everyone must be 6'5". Like, obviously Marty's not 6'5", but it was still there was also a little bit of the hidden kind of, at that time, there was a lot of the belief of, well, if you're a goalie, it's very hard to find translatable success to North America, right? Like, you think about, like, there's a lot of, in the top goalies today being mostly non-North Americans, wasn't like, people will look at the outliers. They'll think like, oh, well, there's Dominik Hasek. Name me another Czech goalie from the 90s that played in the NHL. Kind of hard beyond maybe Roman Turek, right? Right. That's probably. So there's a little bit of a bias there too against that. So you're more likely to take the kid who was 6'1" from Minnesota Duluth or the London Knights or something like that.
So let's just for a quick moment assume that the Stars take Lundqvist and he develops even with Marty Turco there. I think the thought in my head, Luds, is you probably don't trade for Kari Lehtinen, and because it goes from Marty, and Henrik debuted after the lockout year in the NHL, so 05-06 was his first year. So you probably have him playing a lot fewer games because he played 70 games in 06-07 for the Rangers. But you have Turco and Lundqvist, and then Henrik carries you into the 2010s and beyond as Marty's getting toward the advanced ages. I mean, talk about a succession plan. That's a couple of possible Hall of Fame type guys.
Yeah. It's hard for me to talk like you guys do on this kind of stuff because I feel like instead of a glass of water in front of me, I should have a crown right now listening to you two go through this whole thing, which I may in a couple of minutes. But again, what he's turned into, in his prime and beyond and right up until the end, he's, like you said, he's a Hall of Fame goaltender. And I think, they won a Stanley Cup with a Hall of Fame goaltender, and that was Ed Belfour, right? And so since then, you kind of need that guy. And I like to them other two guys. So, and
I said this, the 2016 team, that was a really good Dallas Stars team. If they had better goaltending in the playoffs, I think they win the Stanley Cup that year. They were that good. I feel like if they had Ben Bishop in 2016 or Henrik Lundqvist, they could have beaten St. Louis in that Game 7 that they got trounced at home. Then they probably would have steamrolled the San Jose Sharks and then Pittsburgh Penguins. It would have been an interesting run, I think. But all right, next one.
Other teams could probably say the same thing.
Of course, right? The what ifs are there. So the next one as we move along is a big one. What if the Mighty Ducks movie had flopped?
Yeah, that's I think that's the one that's the biggest from a Stars perspective, just from this being a DLLS Stars show and not a, I don't even know how you take the A out of Los Angeles for the I don't know how you devowelize the teams in Southern California. SCC, I guess. I don't know. But so before the Stars moved to Dallas, before when they knew they were going to leave Minnesota, they knew that was going to happen. One of the early spots was the North Stars were going to move to Anaheim and be a team called the LA Stars or the Anaheim Stars, depending on which one they finalized upon. But that basically botched. Sorry, that plan was, the NHL kiboshed that plan because a movie called The Mighty Ducks came out in 1992, had a really big commercial success. Two guys Lud's Nose had little cameos in it. With
that's what I was going to say. Baz and Mo would have never been movie stars.
Exactly. And I think Baz, I remember I talked to Baz like 4 or 5 years ago, and he told me
this is Basil McRae.
Yeah, Basil McRae. 4 or 5 years ago, I talked to Basil, and he told me like he still got like a $73 check like every 3 or 4 months from the movie.
The mailbox money.
Like, so it's something like that.
Hey, but you know what? That money's big to Baz. Maybe not Mo, but it was big to Baz.
Yes. And so because the movie did so well, Disney got a bit of this hockey kick, and they were like, okay, well, we'd love to bring an NHL team to Anaheim and call them the Mighty Ducks. And so the league had already had kind of a handshake verbal agreement with Norm Green to move the team to Anaheim. And so the league went to Norm and said, hey, we're still going to let you move the franchise, but it can't be there. We're going to get this $50 million. I think it was $50 million. Hold on.
So as Sean's looking it up,
$50 million. Yeah.
Okay. You would have been relocated instead of to Dallas to Southern California with the North Stars. That would have been a different scenery for you and the guys that were in Minnesota in the early 90s.
Yeah. And again, in hindsight, we probably would have been happier going to California. Honestly, I don't know. I have no idea. I'm super happy that we didn't go to California because everything worked out obviously really well in Dallas. And it's probably the reason that I end up staying here for the rest of my life. So again, I didn't even know any of that. I've never heard any of this about what the whole could have gone there. And we didn't, we only got bits and pieces, to be honest with you, about Dallas. It was kind of kept pretty quiet the whole time. And then all of a sudden, and I see, for me personally, I was kind of happy because I was in Montreal for a long time. And all of a sudden I come within 4 hours of my hometown. Now I can, there's some family and friends and all that kind of stuff can come. But ultimately, I'm really happy we did move to Dallas because they used to call for tickets. They'd let you know, hey, we're coming, we like to come. Yeah. And then it went from 2 tickets to 6 tickets. And then it just went from a knock on the door. Oh, we're here. And like, no warning. So it would just end up, It was a short John, and so you got too much of too much.
You needed a family buffer there. Sean,
Yeah.
anything less you want to add on this one before we continue?
I want to add that I wouldn't have gotten a snowmobile deal from Skidoo if I'd have went to Anaheim.
Might have been on the beach a lot.
I will add that we have to start motoring much quicker through all of these because that's the mandate right now. So go.
All right. Up next, more what ifs here on DLLS.
Just like your favorite team needs a home ice advantage, your home needs a home floor advantage. And Empire can help. This isn't a fantasy read. This is all real. Empire Today has dedicated flooring professionals who focus on flooring every single day. Empire Today lives and breathes flooring, and they're with you every step of the way. It's a whole different ballgame. Get your measurements taken and have all your questions answered so there are no surprises. With Empire Today, you get a clear, upfront, and all-inclusive pricing, plus you can schedule installation as soon as the next day. Schedule a free in-home estimate today because some things are just better at home. DLLS listeners can receive a $350 discount when using promo code DLLS. That's right, a $350 discount with code DLLS.
All right, thanks, Luds. Let's talk about Monarch Money. You know, some people really do have a tough time tracking where your money goes. And of course, you can have financial blind spots like, hey, takeout, dining out, online shopping, retail therapy, you name it. Finances can be messy and confusing. Monarch Money acts like your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control so you can stop earning and start growing. It's more than your average budgeting app. Monarch Money is a complete financial command center for your accounts, investments, and goals. You don't just manage your money. You start building wealth with 50% off your first year for our listeners. What are some of the things that you can do? Well, you can learn how you don't need to overspend on this or wasting money on that. And of course, you can track your spending to make sure you know exactly where it's going. So start managing your finances to build the life you actually want. Without a clear financial picture, financial dreams can feel out of reach. Monarch makes managing money simple, even for busy lives, and we're all pretty darn busy. Plus, it was just named Wall Street Journal's best budgeting app of 2025, and the top recommended personal finance app by users and experts, over 30,000 five-star reviews. Get control of your overall finances with Monarch Money. Use the code DLLS at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code DLLS. All right, let's move on to our next what if. And guys, this one goes back to one that's very close at heart to his teammate, occasionally his defensive partner. What if Bob Gainey had listened to the mandate from his ownership and not traded for Sergei Zubov? Sean, set the scene here.
Yeah, so the story is it's June 22nd, 1996, and it is Bob Gainey. It's draft weekend. All the Dallas Stars representatives are together, and Bob Gainey gets a call from Craig Patrick, who is the general manager of the Pittsburgh Penguins at the time. And as it has been relayed to me from Bob and others in the room, the conversation went as so. Would you be interested in Sergei Zubov? Yes. We'd want Hatcher. Darian? No. Kevin. Bob hangs up the phone, asks the room, is there any reason we wouldn't trade Kevin Hatcher for Sergei Zubov? No one else in the room obviously has any reason to think of why not to make that trade. Now, the one mandate that ownership at the time, which was Tom Hicks, right? It was the one mandate he had at the time was to Bob was, you can make any move you want. I'm never going to question why you do it, but I just want you to call me and tell me about it before and explain it to me so I understand, so I'm never surprised. Tom Hicks is on the Black Sea doing some other business deal. Don't know what the actual business deal is.
That doesn't sound mysterious at all.
Yes, but he's on the
oil.
Yes. And so Bob and others at the Stars make 7 to 8 different calls trying to get a hold of him and can't get a hold of him. And it basically comes down to the decision. Bob's like, well, this one he's going to have to find out from separately because this deal is too good to pass up. So Bob stuck to his guns, made the trade. Tom Hicks finds out about the trade later from a newspaper because he couldn't get a hold of him. But to me, it's just the whole quick thing of like, once again, I'll tease it now. When I wrote a whole book about the Stars and interviewed Luds for it, and he drank me under the table while interviewing him, and it was a great
As you would
experience.
expect.
But for me, the Zubov trade was one of the moments that took you guys from a great team to a Stanley Cup contender. That was, to me, that's one of those. And I think there's so much for this franchise's history, and obviously the championship in '99 that hinged so much on that deal. And that's why that is one of those where good on Bob for not being afraid of his owner.
Yeah, for me, we don't have another Stanley Cup ring. Me personally. And again, I know there's other guys that go into that, but it being what Zuby did and everything that he did was incredible. The one negative, if they wouldn't have made that move, I probably wouldn't be sitting here a couple of years later with secondhand cigarette smoke cancer. But
he stopped smoking. He stopped.
Well, I don't smoke. Yeah. I did have Zuby. I will tell you, I had Zubov one day. I don't remember where it was, but we walked in to get our room keys, and all of a sudden got our keys, and we both looked at each other, and I had Sergei Zubov as a roommate. He looked more like me. That lasted about because I think we got into our rooms around 5 or 6 o'clock in the afternoon, and by the time I came home that particular night, he had already checked out of that room. When I got back, he had enough of it when I unpacked my bag again. So no.
Did he ever give you a reason why he left your room?
No, he never gave us reasons for anything. He didn't. He just does what he does. So and the beautiful thing about when I did have the chance to play with Zubov is I just knew I'd never get the puck back. Like it was there were so many times I would just get, because I knew it, just give Zuby the puck. That's it. And then be ready to, if something should ever happen, be ready to defend or play a 2-on, whatever. But even when he had no other options, and this is no word of a lie, he would get the puck. He'd look to his left and look at me, and he'd do something else with it. He would just skate with it a little bit, and then he'd make some kind of softer play. So he was the perfect partner for me, to not be able to make as many mistakes, is because I never got the puck back. But I knew it was just an easy no-brainer, get it and give it to him. But yeah, I just think that he made life. The guys that would be, if you ask this question to guys like Mo and Hully, they would have a way different answer, because I remember one time Hully had made a comment about Zuby, I got to get in a better spot, or I got to do something like that, which you never, very rarely hear that from Brett Hull. But Zuby said, you just go where you go. I will get you the puck. And the same thing was said to Mike. You just go, do what you do. Don't change your routes. Just, I will get it. And it was beautiful to watch.
All right. The next one is a draft one that Luds loves. What if the Stars only had one pick in the 5th round in 2007, Sean?
Yeah, another quick scene setter for you. We go to 2007. It is the 5th round. Dallas Stars actually have back-to-back picks in the 5th round. Pick 128 and 129. And Jenko has relayed this story to me before. They're sitting at the table. Mark Jenko's working in PR at the time. He's not he's worked his way up. He has since worked his way up all the way to assistant GM with this organization. And so they're at the table, and it's pick 128. And so someone at the table says, you know what? This pick is one people are going to remember for a long time. And then with pick number 128 in the 5th round overall, the Dallas Stars take Austin Smith. So with all due respect,
local Dallas native,
yes,
and high scoring college winger.
Yes. With all due respect to Austin Smith, luckily the Stars had a second pick, this very next one in the 5th round, and with pick 129, the Dallas Stars took Jamie Benn. And obviously the rest has become history with what Jamie's done, but it is well, we can talk about earlier, we talked about the what if on Lundqvist and who knows if he would have been here and everything like that. But with if the Stars didn't have back-to-back picks in the 5th round, probably not getting Jamie Benn. Jamie's probably still having a similar career somewhere because he popped off in his next year at Kelowna before he ever went to Dallas. So good thing from a Stars perspective, good thing they had back-to-back picks in the 5th there, and we didn't have to just think about the Austin Smith draft.
Hey, let's
I'm
60 seconds
that all worked out like that, because there's a plaque that hangs in our alumni locker room that's got Smitty's name on it.
Yeah.
So we're on the same team. It's beautiful. And when we're not on the same team and we're playing against each other, every once in a while, I can frustrate the hell out of him. So it makes me very, very happy.
So in less than 60 seconds, Luds, if this was the case and the Stars did not have Jamie Benn, what would happen?
You know what? I don't know. It'd be so much easier if they could win a Stanley Cup, because then I'd say they wouldn't have won a Stanley Cup. So let's hope that they win one in the next year or so if Jamie's still around. If they don't have Jamie, they weren't able to follow the lead, in my opinion, which is the way that you go as far as a captain. They started with Darian Hatcher. They went to Brendan Morrow. They find a guy that's very similar to them. They don't have the leadership. They don't have the physicality. They don't have Big Daddy doing what he does, regardless of where he is at age 34, 35, or 36 right now. He will ultimately have his jersey hanging in that building, and we hope someday that he has a Stanley Cup with the Dallas Stars logo on it.
Yep.
Up next, 6 more. We got to go a little faster here on DLLS.
Very, very fast.
Well, let me speed it up for you. Mando is a men's deodorant brand that's hyper-focused on keeping every aspect of a man's body smelling fresh and clean. Mando overtly calls out more colorful parts of men's bodies, such as pits, belly buttons, your nuts, your rocks, the gonads, the butt cracks, the grundles that we all know where a grundle is. That's your taint, that's your nacho, and even your feet. Their scents are geared towards men like Bourbon Leather, Cloverwoods, Mount Fuji, and Pro Sport. Created by a doctor who saw firsthand how normal BO was being misdiagnosed and mistreated. Clinically proven to block odor all day and to control it for up to 72s. Whatever. 12 hours after a shower, the average man's grundle odor level is a 5 out of 10. With Mando, the average grundle odor level is 0 out of 10. How would you like to be on that research team? Use code DLLS at shopmando.com.
Probably 2 guys that used Mando, so they were able to focus on other things. With Saturday Neon, started by 2 close friends who Saturday Neon makes officially licensed collegiate logo LED neon signs perfect for your home, office, dorm room, or Lud's favorite, your fan cave. We all know Lud's has one, and it's great. Check out their new Essential collection featuring almost 50 of the biggest schools across the country, and starting for only $75. They got Texas, Texas A&M, Texas Tech, Oklahoma, Oklahoma State, all of the signs, everything you need. Unlike traditional neon, these LED signs won't break or shatter, but you still give that classic uniform glow that you know and love, and the LEDs last up to 100,000 hours, so you'll be ready for your sign for years to come. They're the perfect gift for any time of year, even though the ad read always says holiday season. So next week's the holiday. Buy a sign, whenever you're listening to this. So head over to SaturdayNeon.com and use the code DLLS for 10% off your favorite sign.
All right, guys, thanks very much. Let's get back into this because we have to speed it up just a little bit. Let's start with this one. What if Jim Lights didn't stop Tom Ghilardi from giving his promised interview to Brian Burke? Now, Sean is going to give you the details, but essentially, it's possible Jim Nill wouldn't have been hired as the Dallas Stars general manager. That's the what if, Sean.
Yeah, so the scene setter here is the Stars are going to make a change at the GM. This is after Jim Nill has already turned down the GM job with the Montreal Canadiens at one point here. So it's which would have been interesting since Jim is not doesn't speak French. Now, obviously, they've since gone to Kent Hughes, but apparently, when Tom Ghilardi bought the team, he had always said he had promised that if in typical glad handing, shaking hands conversations, Tom Ghilardi had promised Brian Burke that if he ever had an open GM job, he'd make sure he got an interview for it. So they've got everything all lined up. They've talked to Jim. They've worked with him at Detroit. They basically have a deal in principle to go along that Jim Nill is going to leave his AGM role in Detroit and come to Dallas. And basically, this is all getting close to the end. And then Ghilardi says, okay, that's great, but now we got to go. We got to give Berkey a call. And this is where the moment of Jim Lights has said some crazy things in his life, and you can have a varying opinion one way or the other of them. But this is one where he did the right thing and told basically Tom, well, I'm assuming there was at least 3 to 4 F-bombs in there and telling him no to this. But he said, no, if you go and give the interview to Berkey, it will quickly get to a high insider that he is interviewing for the job. And Jim will be highly disrespected by that. And you will lose Jim Nill as your GM if you go through and do that. So Tom kept his mouth shut, did not make the call, and Jim Nill became the Stars GM. So we were in a world where there could have been quite an interesting wrinkle, probably not the way people would have hoped it went.
Well, this seems to me, why is it like we didn't want Berkey here? Why didn't you? It seems to me that Burke has got has a Stanley Cup.
He does.
Well, I mean, I don't understand. This is no slight to Jim Nill.
No.
And Burke at the time was probably a sought after guy and kind of knew his way around the league.
Yeah.
What was wrong with that?
No, there was nothing wrong with that. The point was where it was he wasn't part of the, and this is, you can have a whole nother lengthier conversation that I don't want to go deeper down because we don't have the time to get through everything. But the whole point was they had basically come to an agreement in principle with Jim on getting the deal done. And it was so you've already got things in place. And so now that you've already got Jim to leave Detroit and you've got him to agree to leave to Detroit, you now can't throw in the wrinkle of, okay, now you're competing for the job after we've already recruited you to leave and come to Dallas. So that's where it is.
If I said that earlier, I wouldn't have said what I said about Berkey. Okay, good.
All right.
Yep.
So the next one. This one has to do with wardrobe. What if Razor, aka Daryl Ray, had gotten his way and changed the color scheme to red, white, and blue?
Wait a second. Where is Razor from?
He is from British Columbia.
When did he become this American flag carrier, red, white, and blue? It's like he's a MAGA guy now. They're then.
Well, you lost Sean on that one. That's great. You got him on that one, Luds.
Oh my God. Anywho, so before they rebranded to Victory Green, Daryl was part of the committee for uniforms, just like he seems to be for every committee of broadcasters. As we all know, he makes a pretty penny compared to most other in his profession, and he has more power than anyone else.
Penny compared to some GMs in this league.
I know he does. It is that's saying the quiet part out loud that I guess I'm allowed to say that others aren't. So
but he's worth every penny.
Yes, but in the conversation we have, in the conversation when they're talking about jersey rebrand and color scheme and everything like that, Daryl is the one who is champion. We need to go red, white, and blue. We need to be like some other teams in this city. And I believe part of it was looking over at some other cities like Pittsburgh, where all of the teams are the same color, and it's also coming off some past history. Obviously, even though they were trying to get away from it after ownership change, but the Rangers and Stars had worked well together. And so there was the whole okay, red, white, and blue, and it would fit well with Stars. And basically, Razor was the one championing that, and he was ultimately outvoted, and we ended up with Victory Green and the scheme the Stars have now, which I think is great because I think it's a league that's got already too many red and blue jerseys. And I think one of the great things about the Stars color scheme is you turn on a random TV and you see that color of green, you know it's a Stars game. You turn on a
right
game.
Away.
So did he get his way with the Muterus jersey? Was that him too?
I don't know. There's been a lot of people who have decided to clam up. I'm using that word on purpose. Who decided to clam up?
Song that went, just like the song that went away too, that we can't figure out.
Yes, the
darkness.
Yes, can we play that? Are we allowed, if the Stars aren't allowed to use it, can we just play the darkness music for the final 30 minutes on? Do we have the rights?
I mean, probably not, but we could try.
Just play that.
Forgiveness later.
Yes.
Reaction now versus when you first saw the Victory Green rebrand, because it was a bold change, right? They went from the written Dallas with the number on the front and the back of their jerseys to the beveled D with the star in it and the color change. And now it seems like it's been a decade plus since they did this. It just feels like it's part of the Dallas Stars, but it was a pretty aggressive change.
By the way, the Dallas one, they stole from our U18 program. We had that the year before. That's what
did you really?
For that. Yes. So,
with the word mark, the word Dallas and the number on the front.
Yep.
So what? Either one of you guys, it compared to when you first saw the Victory Green rebrand to now, how do you feel about it?
Short for me, I'm cool with it. I think all their jerseys look great except that one. Well, possibly two, the red, white, and blue one, but I think they've done a good job with all of them, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's been a good job. I like the Victory Green color scheme. I think it gives a uniqueness in the league that is not nearly unique enough. So yeah, I like what happened with all of that. And if you went red, white, and blue, you would just be another red, white, and blue team in the NHL, right?
Yep. Well, and as much as I like what Sean said of, Pittsburgh has matching colors for their teams, but do you really want to just look like the Cowboys? Texas Rangers do a little bit of an adjustment with the baby blue, but they have the red and white and blue there. And the Mavericks I don't know if they've seen a lot of red from them, but yeah, I think it's good to have a little bit of variety. In a city like Dallas, as much as there's the camaraderie.
There's a lot of red when they traded Dirk.
Oh, but yeah. All right, let's go to the next one, which is, what if Jim Montgomery had never been fired for unprofessional conduct? Obviously, this is self-explanatory in the sense that if he hadn't been fired, do you think Jim Montgomery would still be the Dallas Stars head coach today?
No, because the lifespan is 2.7 years of every coach. Of course he wasn't still be. They'd have found a way to fire him.
You think so? Like if
I just don't think that just the way the league in itself is, it's 2.3. I think it is 2.3 is the average lifespan here. So yeah, I'd say that he wouldn't be here for whatever reason it was. I mean, what happens if they, don't put a season together and everybody gets we got to change everything, because you don't change the players anymore. You change the coaches. So I don't know. Mm-hmm. It would have been nice to find out though. That's what we know.
Sean?
Good coach.
Yeah, I think he would have, because I think with Jim Nill, I think at his heart believes he made the right hockey hire with Jim Montgomery when he made that hire. And it's and so for that is the reason that I'm curious if he would still be here, because there have been other hires under Jim Nill's tenure where it was not his choice of who he hired. That is, there have been times where the owner has made that hire. And we talked about a story earlier where the owner puts his hands in things and everything like that. And so there have been so the Jim Montgomery hire was one that Jim Nill felt he made the right hockey hire. And I know that it was, I know for Jim, that was a really tough circumstance, the way it all played out, because it's one of those, like, with how the timing of it and to have to do it and everything like that. And Jim, we know, is a very loyal person. He's a big believer in giving people a benefit of the doubt. He's a big believer in second chances. And for whatever Jim Montgomery did, which still has never been made public, and I don't know what it is, and I'm not going to pretend that I know, but for whatever Jim Montgomery did,
I don't know if we'll ever know.
I don't know if we'll ever know, Luds.
Yeah, look at Luds perking up. I don't know if we'll ever know in public. Let's put it that way, because who knows? So, maybe Luds finds a way to find out these things.
And but I know that for Jim Nill's perspective, it was a really hard decision where he found out what happened, and there was no way to go back on that. And that is knowing that and knowing how he thought it was the right hockey hire and how loyal Jim is. I think Jim Montgomery might have had the chance to surpass that 2.3 years, maybe go even further, because and he might have still been the coach today, and because who knows how things shake out. So I think it would have been good to find out.
So Luds, I want to ask you about that, because you're right. Coaching lifespans are tiny. They're minuscule, right? And if teams are not set up properly, the coach gets the fall for other issues, because it's easier to fire a coach than half the roster or all of it, because you just can't, with the salary cap, turnover like you could pre-cap. So the question, I guess, is that you're a big fan of John Cooper. We all are. And, who knows? Maybe Luds will use his connection with Coop to get him on the show at some point during the offseason, or maybe during the season. Who knows? But that's what everyone's looking for, is the next John Cooper, the next guy that can be there for 10 years plus. And Coop looks like I know there's rumors about Utah, and who knows what'll happen after this year, but he's been in Tampa for a really long time. If Jim Montgomery wasn't fired in December of 2019, then he would have been the head coach of the Stars when they went into the bubble instead of Rick Bowness. And I love Bones, and we're going to try to get him on at some point and talk about Stars stuff, because he's one of the great hockey personalities of all time, Rick Bowness. And they did a great job, that staff, of figuring things out under pretty weird circumstances to lose their head coach in the middle of a season and then have a lockdown because of COVID and then going into a bubble and all that. But they, after going to the final in the bubble, kind of regressed the next year and things went a little wonky and whatever. Could they have had a John Cooper-like figure like Jim Montgomery? Because I know Boston had some weird things going on there, but you also saw that they had the best regular season ever. And look at what he's done since going to St. Louis. So, Mike, do you think it's possible that Montgomery could still be the Stars head coach had he not been fired in 2019?
I would say yes for everything that Sean said. And the main reason is Jim Nill. That, I think the general managers and owners or whoever ultimately is pulling the trigger, they got a trigger figure. I mean, it's just more about pleasing fans and, instead of doing the right thing sometimes. So I think, yes, he could be, because, the team has been a very good team. But again, all this kind of stuff happens for a reason, I guess they say. Not sure, but yeah, where Monty goes, they win. And, and again, like what happens in Boston, different kind of market, and maybe there's a little bit more pressure from ownership and all that other kind of stuff to move on. And, or did it have anything to do with a player on the bench at times, all that kind of stuff. So, that's one good thing I think about being in Dallas, as popular as Dallas is and everything. I don't think you have the magnifying glass or the everything on them for every single move that happens here. Like maybe it's just the original 6 teams, but so no, he's a great coach. There's no question. It would be awesome to still have him here, and you never know. Maybe someday he'll be back.
Can always happen.
Yeah. Brought Glenn Gulletson back. They brought Hitch back. Who could be the next one brought back? We'll see. Well, we'll see if Gully goes on a nice long run as well. All right, the next one, guys. This is the one that's sort of against what we said of we're not going to do fan fiction, but we had to do this one. What if Brett Hull's goal was called back for being in the crease in Game 6 into the 1999 Stanley Cup final?
Oh, I got a couple answers, but no. But one thing I do want to say about it, the way that apparently the rule was at the time is you can go in after the puck is in there. Okay, and I did see one. It was an overhead clip of it. Yeah, you guys probably saw it. Yeah. And to me, Hully wasn't in there when that puck went in there. Hully went in after that puck went in there. Now, I don't know. I mean, that was just one view, and like everything else, we can't even tell when a goal goes across the goal line in today's day. So, so that, I mean, again, it doesn't mean that if that goal is called back, it still doesn't end the same way. It doesn't mean that. The good news is for Dallas, we had an extra game. We had another game that, you could have possibly won. But do I feel bad for Lindy? Nope.
So let me put it this way, just because you are in that spot. How would that team have responded? Because I still, once again, I think that's the point that always gets lost by people in Buffalo. You guys were up 3-2 in the series. They would have had to go back to Dallas for Game 7. And even if that goal didn't count, there was still, you guys could have just scored again. So in that game. So if that was called back, what's the reaction of your bench right there that you guys then recenter and go get the next one?
I would say that with that team, even the one, and I played with some legends in Montreal too, and we won that one. This particular team in Dallas, the group was unflappable. It was, there could be those kind of moments that came in games, and you never, the only guy that ever got out of control was the guy standing behind the bench. I mean, and we had enough conversations with him where you could just, I'd get a little nudge from somebody, and I just have to turn around and I'd say, "Hitch, shut up." And then because he had those talks with some of us about that. Sometimes they get a little crazy. But the credit again goes to Bob Gainey, because when this team started looking like there was an opportunity to win a championship, it was because of the players that he went out and added to this team. And they were those kind of guys. The first one that always comes to mind, obviously, is Keener. And so there was just a different demeanor in that room, whether it was really hard times. There were enough guys in there, Brian School, I can go down the list of guys that go, everybody just relax here. Let him come in. We know he's going to come in. He's going to do this thing. We're all not going to do anything. We're going to stare at the floor. He's going to get pissed off because we're not listening to him. He's walking out. And this all happened in Montreal the year that we won the cup there. And we won it with a coach that was I don't ever want to put him in any kind of category, but it happened one time when he came in for a little, one of those kind of things. The door got slammed and someone turned around and said, I can't say it, I know that guy down the hall, we know what we're doing in here. We will do it with the way we want to do it. We don't need that guy behind the bench. It just so happened that guy was general manager of the All-Stars too. So I'm just saying that. But so I've been lucky to be around guys that have that kind of mentality.
Okay, one last part of this though. Two layers to it. One, Mike Modano, I saw him do a thing with, I think it was Spit and Chicklets earlier this year, where he said he thought the puck was coming right to him, that if Hully had knocked it home, he scores, and then he's the Stanley Cup hero and whatever. He's still got to hoist the cup. But what if you had to go to a game 7? Because I think that's the thing people forget. They say, oh, it was in the crease, or the Buffalo fans.
Yeah.
And Sean, you brought up a great point. They could easily have just scored another goal, the Stars, and won the game later, and there wouldn't have been that controversy. I think it was Hitch when he came back for the second time. I believe, Luds, he said that he wasn't sure game 7 would have been very good for Dallas because he felt that you guys were really beat up. Is that because you really were, or was that the letdown after you already won that you knew you didn't have to run any more race?
No, it was because there were some guys playing through some stuff, like there is every single year. But I will say that you don't ever want to play in a game 7 if you don't have to. And because especially in that situation there, Buffalo would have thought they got another, they got another kick at the can, right? They got a little bit, another life. They hadn't used all 9 lives. And then when you go back home in a game 7, and in that circumstance, the pressure is on the home team. And the longer that those games go on, hey guys, we got nothing. If I'm on the other team, we got nothing to lose. We were supposed to lose last time. We didn't lose last time. We got out of that one. Hey, if we lose, we lose. Not that you want to, but I just think that in game 7s, it's always on the home team. If you go there, you can come in a little bit looser the other one. So good thing it didn't, but I still would, if it happened all over again, I will put us up in that game, pick that up again.
Luds, what was the?
Nope, you can't ask him another question.
Why not?
Because we are late on the ads.
We went early to the other ads.
First we were early, now we're late. That
DLLS.
should be even. Look at
All right,
Elijah. Elijah is quick on that button, man.
Let's talk about the ball knower bonus, because the ball knower bonus is tonight. It's Tuesday. It's July 15th. It's the MLB All-Star Game at Truist Park in Atlanta. I don't know if by the time you're seeing this, you can still get in on it, but here's what we've been doing. You can win an ALLCITY gift card to our DLS merchandise store if you pick correctly. How does it work? Well, you pick the winner of tonight's All-Star Game. You've had a couple of weeks. We've been talking about this for a while. Then you browse our store, make a purchase of at least $25, if not more. And if your pick wins, you win a gift card for the same amount as your original order. That's great. The important thing, though, is you must click on our link, which is in the chat, also in the show YouTube description, to bet and get your gift card. If you don't, you might not get credit for it and then not win. So again, tonight, All-Star Game, who wins? National League, American League. That's the ball knower bonus. Pick correctly, and you may get a gift card on us for the same amount as your original order. And the last thing we have to talk about before we get back to the what ifs is the being a DLS diehard. Well, lots of things going on. First, we have the discount. If you do become a diehard, not only do you get a free t-shirt, you also get discounts on other merchandise. So sign up to be a diehard, get the discount, then do the ball knower bonus, and you get a discount on that. And then you can win more if you get your picks correct. I think it's a great option of sort of layering them on top. Plus, of course, the shirts, the Otter shirt, the Finnish Mafia, the Wyatt 16-bit, the Mikko Rantanen finisher one. I've got that, or my son got that one. The Captain and the Moose, we've seen those. Oh, don't forget all the access to all the writing. Sean and Sam, that's right, Sick Sam and Sean. We should, maybe that is new nickname of many. And you can get access to, of course, all the other stuff. Cowboys, Rangers, Mavericks, Dallas Wings. There's a show now. Elijah's helping with producing that. All that and more. Go to alldls.com. Use the QR code. Sign up to be a diehard today. All right, Sean, do you want to ask one follow-up on Luds before we go to the final two what-ifs?
Yeah, because this is actually, I'm intrigued. I've never heard Lud's thoughts on this. Luds, what was your internal perception of Buffalo? Because, like, when you looked from an outside perspective and you watched that run, a lot of people kind of looked like who was going to be out of the, like, whoever came out of the West, some of the teams you went through in the second round and in the Western Conference Final, there was a big outside belief that the Western Conference Final was the Stanley Cup Championship. And obviously you can't approach it that way internally. But what was your kind of internal view of the Buffalo Sabres going into that series when you looked at it? Because outside it was very much, hey, whoever's going to come out of this war in the West is going to run through whoever's in the Eastern final. So
the talk, I think, Sean, everything that was geared to it was we are the team that we are, but the focus on it was to make it difficult on the goaltender. That was the whole focus. Is you're going to make it uncomfortable, and again, it kind of played out on that last one, right? I mean, so there were guys accidentally falling and getting hit and tripping throughout that whole series. I think the confidence was there, but I think there was also a cautious approach to it because we knew that there was a guy at the other end of the rink that could steal a game, just like the guy at our end of the rink stole some games. So that, but besides that, you know, it's funny. You can look back and we were so dialed in, and again, I can only talk about some of the other times in playoffs and the one in 80 and 86. You know, there was concerns at times. Like, I don't know if we're going to be able to get by this team. And man, I don't think we can do that. There was none of that as we went on. And even in that game in Denver, there was just, you kind of knew what was going to happen. And we had a goaltender in Eddie that after every loss, he just seemed to get better, you know? So it started probably with him. But again, you look at it and I think it's either 5 or 6 Hall of Famers were on that team.
Yeah.
At the end of the day. So there was enough guys to lean on. So the rest of us were all feeling pretty comfortable.
All right, let's move on because we could do a whole rest of the segment on that. That's such a fun topic. 2 more what ifs, and then we'll wrap things up today. What if John Spano had been able to pull off his con to buy the Stars before he did the same thing with the New York Islanders? Now, this is one of the crazier stories in any NHL circle because this is a guy who almost convinced the league and then eventually did, but with the Islanders, that he had enough money to buy an NHL franchise. And it turns out he didn't.
Yeah, so there's a really good documentary on this called Mr. Big Shot about John Spano.
Featuring Stars chairman and former president Jim Lites.
And so in October of 96, John Spano was able to buy, I think it was 85% of the Islanders, but never proved he ever actually had any money. And the story goes, there's a bunch of like great examples of it. At one point, there was supposed to be like a $5 million deposit, and he sent $5,000. And there was like, oh, it was just a money.
Got a couple zeros.
Yes, exactly. And so, but he was basically, John Spano was able to swindle the NHL and Islanders ownership into basically getting control of the New York Islanders until it was finally, the gig was finally came up where it's like, we need the money. And he wasn't able to, but he was actually controlling the Islanders for about 7 to 8 months on this. A year and a half earlier, I got my notes here real quick. It was September of 95. It was September of 95. There's a deal in principle built up to buy 50%, not to buy all of the Stars, but to buy 50% of the Stars from Norm Green. Norm's looking to sell the team. He's got about a 50% deal, and Spano is, and so there's the agreement has been made in principle, and then the two sides start talking more, and Spano starts asking for random things, and there's people within the Stars organization are like, this is not the way a billionaire acts. They like, so, and apparently one of the glass breaking moments that ended the potential deal with the Stars was they're at a big expensive dinner and everything like that. Quick note, if you're going to ever buy an NHL team, if you're a billionaire listening to this show and you're trying to prove someone you have the money, when you're at the big expensive $1,000 dinner, pick up the tab. John Spano did not pick up the tab at dinner. And when he's trying to buy the team, and a bunch of people from the Stars are like, this guy says he has the money to buy the hockey team, and he's trying to convince us to sell it to him, and he's leaving us with the dinner tab. That was, so if you're, optics matter, so if you're a billionaire listening to this, you want to go buy a sports franchise, make sure you pick up the dinner tabs. That rubs people the wrong way. And so that's the start of it, and it falls apart, and eventually the Stars are like, no, we're not going to, Norm and his team are say we're not going to sell to him. The crazy thing about all of this is the NHL knew, and this goes back to, this is a big black eye for the NHL in my view. The NHL knew he had tried to buy part of the Stars. The deal falls through. Okay, we don't have to think about it again. But then he goes to buy the Islanders, and the league never calls the Stars to ask them, why did you not sell part of the team to John Spano? And so
talk about not vetting your sources.
And so the from an NHL perspective, they did not vet well, clearly enough, and so yes, it was a little bit of Stars connection to one of the more wonky things in NHL history, and it's now the Islanders get the bigger black eye because the Stars were willing to realize that, hey, if you're not picking up dinner tabs for $1,000, you probably don't have the money to buy a multi-million-dollar franchise.
Yeah, I got a story about a dinner tab. Madonna had to buy dinner at Burns Steakhouse in Tampa Bay one year, so I decided to go get dessert. I got 23 shots of King Louis the 13th. Yeah, go ahead, look it up. It's about $90 a shot.
Is it really? Wow.
Yeah, and if you knew Mo, I mean, he's got alligator on. He was madder than hell.
Yeah,
he forgave you though. Apparently.
Pick up the tab, Mo.
All right, one more to go, guys, and this one goes very close to home. What if Craig Ludwig hadn't retired after winning the 1999 Stanley Cup and returned for one more season? As Luds has said on this show, they asked him halfway through the year, come play. What happens, Luds, if you're back on the team before the run to the 2000 Stanley Cup final against New Jersey?
Unfortunately, probably the same thing, because the guy that they wanted me to come back and replace, I might have been out there in that same spot and done the same thing. Quick story. I went to, he wanted me to go to our farm team and coach the farm team. And I said, let me think about it. I was actually up here north snowmobiling with about 10 friends at 2:00 in the afternoon. And we had started about 8:00 in the morning. So I had to walk outside and take that phone call. I got back to him a couple of days. I said, okay. And I went there. And then he says to me the next day, he goes, well, bring your equipment with you. And I'm like, yeah, I got my skates, my gloves, my sticks, helmet, all that kind of stuff. I'll be there. He goes, well, grab the rest of your stuff too. I'm like, for what? I said, I'm not going to need that. He goes, well, after the first 2 games, you got like 6 days off. And I said, yeah. And he goes, well, you can put stuff on and skate with the guy. I said, what the fuck? Why would I want to do that? And so, and then finally he kind of says, listen, I'd like you to come back. I'm like, come back to Dallas now? He goes, no, come back and play. I'm like, come on. And he goes, yeah. And I said, give me a couple of days. Ultimately, I called him back and I said, I told general managers, I said, hey, I have now we're talking about being 40 years old, mid-season, drinking for 6 months and just not really skating much, right? And I said, here's the deal. I have no problem coming back and have somebody scoot around me when they're at game speed in game 42 and dance around me. I said, but my twins are just going into high school. I don't need them going to school the next day and getting ridiculed day after day that your dad gets smoked or something like that. So that's kind of why I didn't, and I'm happy I didn't, because when he went around that guy, that was the guy he was talking about to start with. He goes, I'm not really happy with this particular player. And so I may have been in that same situation, although I would have backed right into the net. I wouldn't try to stand anybody up or anything like that. So it all turned out okay. But, who knows? Maybe it'd have hit my shin pad. I don't know.
And maybe just like Razor, your shin pads would be in the Hall of Fame.
Yes, maybe.
All right, Sean, very quickly, we have to rank these, or at least we self-imposed that we were going to rank these.
Yeah.
That's 10 in 2 minutes or less. Which one stands out to you as the top? Let's go top to bottom.
Yeah, I just to go real quick on it. I mean, you have to start with the one. It's the reason it's in the overall top 10 list, I think, is you have to consider that up there, because there might not be a franchise here, right? And
if the Mighty Ducks movie had flopped.
Yeah, and we're not doing a DLLS Stars show if there's no Dallas Stars. So that's the closest to home technically for all three of us on this show right now, even though Luds would probably be well employed in doing whatever he's doing the same thing in California. So but you and I would not be here right now.
Agreed.
So for me, the biggest one is for me though, just the franchise changing one is the Zubov trade.
It has to be, right?
Like that to me, you guys, there were some other moves that were made, obviously adding some other trades, some other moves, but there's adding, as Luds can attest any more than this, adding Sergei Zubov is just a different level of and when you trade a player who is a complimentary piece for a Hall of Famer like that, it's not Like, I know when we were talking about doing this originally, people talked about the Nieuwendyk and the Ginla thing and all of that stuff, and that's fine. But this was trading.
That was a good hockey trade.
That was a good hockey trade. This was a complimentary player who for a future Hall of Famer, and so that would be those two would be 1 and 2 for me. And then I think after that, there's just a bunch of fun stuff that just goes 3 through 10. So
and it's a great point because we talked about it. They could still win if Hull's goal was called back.
Yeah.
The Islanders have survived even if they have a black eye with the Spano stuff. They've certainly dealt without having Jim Montgomery as their head coach. To me, maybe the other one would be either Henrik Lundqvist or Jamie Benn, just because of how important Jamie is and how important Lundqvist could have. But to me, those top two are the big ones.
Yeah.
Right? Because as Lud said, Jim Nill's phenomenal as the GM. But if Brian Burke had been the GM, it might have been okay too. Yeah. You just don't know.
Yeah. This organization only has one Stanley Cup right now. That's the reality, right? There's no other board, nothing else on a board where it's like, we potentially are taking another Stanley Cup off the board. Now, maybe a year from now we can be proven wrong on that, and that would be really.
What if the Stars hadn't gotten rid of Logan Stankoven for Mikko Rantanen?
That'll be really darn fun. But yeah, right now they've won Stanley Cup, and to me, the if you didn't make the Zubov trade, I don't know if you guys win the Cup in '99. I think you're probably a contender, but you're not the same team without Sergei Zubov on that roster. So.
And Luds, your final thought on that, because you're right. Nieuwendyk was a big ad, right? Brett Hull was a big ad. Ed Belfour was a big ad. They're all huge ads. Zubov just seems like the missing piece in all of that, especially for, as Sean said, how they were able to make that trade.
Yeah, I guess for me, I would go off the board, to be honest with you. And all of that stuff that you mentioned is we didn't talk about Bob Gainey being the general manager, because Joe Nieuwendyk, who assisted on that goal with Mo, wouldn't have been there.
Yep.
Zuby wouldn't have been there. Eddie Belfour wouldn't have been there. So he was kind of the architect of all that, and it all kind of came through. But, that goal, Zuby, as you said, Zuby for sure, but he's not there without, guys not answering phones and guys just not going through the right, chain of command and stuff like that. So I would throw the addition of Bob Gainey, or the guy going, well, he was actually the coach and a general manager at one time, and he was smart enough to step down from coaching versus step down from being a GM. And then he ultimately pulled that off. So I don't disagree with any of it. But, yeah, Zuby can be number one for sure.
Yeah.
All right.
And Bob, real quick, like that, just to back up Blood's point, real quick, Bob Gainey is probably the most underappreciated figure in Stars history. I really think that. I think there's so many statues and names and everything like that. And people think, like, no disrespect, Jim Nill has won 3 GM of the Year awards and everything like that. But I think there's a lot of people who are Stars fans who think Jim Nill is the best GM the Stars have ever had, and they're forgetting what Bob Gainey did to build this team. Like, Bob is the most underappreciated person in Stars history. So,
all right, guys, great show. Tomorrow, Wednesday, July 16th, we'll be on at 2:00 live for schedule release day, and hopefully our sick little buddy Sam is back with us. The full NHL schedule should be released tomorrow, so we'll talk about that. Huge thank you to our producer, of course, Elijah, and of course for Sean, Luds, I'm Owen. What if? Tell us your rankings right here on DLLS.
We all silly like the mayor.